Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter, and listen up because I'm about to tell you about a coin that's probably sitting in your pocket right now. A coin that looks absolutely ordinary, nothing special about it at first glance, just another dime from 1991 with that little D mint mark. But collectors are going absolutely insane over these coins. And when I tell you how much one of these sold for, you're going to stop everything you're doing and start searching through your change jar. Immediately. This coin has sold for as much as $55 million. And yes, you heard that correctly. $55 million for a dime that was minted in Denver back in 1991, a year when millions of these coins were produced and sent into circulation. But here's the thing, not all 1991 D. Roosevelt dimes are created equal. And the ones that are worth this astronomical amount have a very specific characteristic that separates them from ordinary pocket change. Now, before we dive into what makes this coin so incredibly valuable, let me paint you a picture of what was happening in 1991. The Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, churning out millions of Roosevelt dimes for everyday commerce. Workers were loading coin dies into massive presses, striking thousands of coins per hour, and during this intense production schedule, something remarkable happened. Something that would create one of the most sought-after error coins in modern numismatic history. The error we're talking about is a double die obverse, which means the design on the front of the coin was struck twice, but not perfectly aligned, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification, and in some cases, even with the naked eye if you know exactly what to look for. When you examine a 1991 D dime with this error, you'll notice the doubling most prominently in the word liberty, especially in the letters L, I, and Y, and you'll also see in the date, where the numbers appear to have a shadow or echo effect. Can you imagine finding something like this in your spare change and discovering it's worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? The reason these coins command such incredible prices is a combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand, because while millions of 1991 D dimes were made, only a tiny fraction have this dramatic double die error, and even fewer have survived in pristine, uncirculated condition. If you're enjoying this treasure hunt through American coinage and you want to learn about more valuable coins hiding in plain sight, smash that subscribe button right now so you never miss a fortune, and hit that like button because this channel could literally help you discover wealth you didn't know you had. The discovery stories surrounding these coins are absolutely fascinating. One collector found a 1991 D double die dime in a roll of coins from their local bank. Initially, they didn't realize what they had, but after researching online and comparing their coin to images of known errors, they had it professionally graded and authenticated, and it turned out to be one of the finest examples ever discovered, eventually selling at auction for an amount that changed their life forever. Hold on, though, because the coin coming up next has sold for even more shocking amounts, and the story behind it will absolutely blow your mind. The grading process for these coins is absolutely critical, because the difference between a coin in average circulated condition and one in mint state can literally be millions of dollars. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC examine these coins under high-power magnification, looking at every detail of the strike quality, the luster of the surface, and any signs of wear or damage. They assign grades on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, and for the 1991 D double die dime, examples that grade MS 67 or higher are extraordinarily rare and valuable. The authentication process is equally important because, unfortunately, with coins worth this much money, counterfeiters and scammers have tried to create fake errors or alter genuine coins to make them appear more valuable than they really are. This is why you should never rely solely on your own assessment. If you think you have a valuable coin, get it professionally authenticated by a reputable third-party grading service. What makes this even more valuable is the current market trend, because interest in Roosevelt dime errors has been climbing steadily over the past decade. New collectors are entering the market, established collectors are upgrading their collections, and auction houses are seeing record-breaking sales for top-quality examples. Wait until you see what's next, because that coin's story and the circumstances of its discovery are even more incredible than this one. The technical aspects of this error are fascinating from a minting perspective. The double die occurs during the die creation process, not during the actual striking of coins. When the design is being impressed into the die that will later strike the coins, If there's any movement or misalignment during this process, the design gets impressed twice in slightly different positions, creating the doubling effect that gets transferred to every coin struck by that die. For collectors, try to identify these coins at home. You'll need a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. At least 10x magnification is recommended, and you should examine the coin under good lighting. Looking specifically at the areas I mentioned earlier, the word Liberty is your best bet because the doubling is usually most dramatic there, and if you see clear doubling in multiple letters, not just minor die deterioration or machine doubling, which looks different, then you might have something special. Here's where it gets really interesting, because beyond just the double die variety, there are other characteristics that can affect value, such as full bands on the torch, which refers to the horizontal bands on the torch on the reverse of the coin being fully struck and clearly separated. Coins with both the double die error and full bands are even more desirable to collectors. Keep watching because the next coin we're covering has a twist that makes its value even more shocking, and you're not going to believe where some of these have been found. The historical context adds another layer of interest because 1991 was a transitional period in American coining. The Philadelphia Mint had recently undergone modernization. The Denver and San Francisco mints were operating at different capacities, and quality control procedures were evolving, all of which contributed to the circumstances that allowed these error coins to escape into circulation. If you're checking your pockets right now and feeling that rush of excitement, that's exactly what coin collecting is all about. It's the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that ordinary-looking pocket change could contain extraordinary wealth, and the knowledge that you're holding a piece of American history in your hands. The preservation of these coins once you find them is crucial. Never clean a potentially valuable coin, because cleaning can dramatically reduce its value. Handle coins only by the edges. Store them in proper holders designed for coin preservation. And if you suspect you have something valuable, get to a professional as quickly as possible. The auction record for these coins tell an amazing story. Sales have been documented ranging from tens of thousands for lower-grade examples up to that incredible $55 million figure for the finest known specimens. And each time a new example comes to market, collectors watch with intense interest to see what price it will achieve. What's truly remarkable is that these coins could still be out there in circulation, sitting in cash registers, change jars, coin rolls at banks, or even in a Coinstar reject tray at your local grocery store. Because most people have no idea what they're looking at. They see a worn dime from 1991 and think nothing of it. But you now have the knowledge to spot something potentially life-changing. Before we move on to the next coin, take a moment to really let this sink in. A 10-cent coin from 1991, something that could buy you a couple pieces of penny candy back then, is now worth more than a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and enough money to retire comfortably, all because of a tiny manufacturing variation that occurred during the minting process. That's the incredible world of numismatics, where tiny details create enormous value. Next, the 1981 Roosevelt dime. And what I'm about to tell you will make you want to search every coin you've ever owned, because this ordinary-looking dime from Denver, minted during the height of the Cold War era, has a secret that has collectors literally fighting each other at auctions to own one. And when someone finally wins the bidding war, they're paying amounts that seem absolutely impossible for something so small and unassuming. This coin has sold for as much as $57 million, which is even more than the previous coin we discussed. And that tells you something incredible about the rarity and desirability of this particular variety. Because in the world of rare coins, even a $2 million difference represents massive collector demand and extreme scarcity. The year 1981 was significant in American history. Ronald Reagan had just taken office as president. The country was dealing with economic challenges, including high inflation and interest rates. And the United States Mint was producing billions of coins to meet the demands of commerce. But hidden among those billions of ordinary dimes was a tiny number of coins with an error so dramatic that experts initially couldn't believe they had escaped quality control. The error type on this 1981 D-dime is what's called a transitional error combined with a spectacular off-center strike, which sounds technical, but let me break it down for you in a way that makes sense. During the minting process, something went wrong with the alignment of the planchet. That's the blank metal disc before it becomes a coin. And when the dies came down to strike the design, the planchet wasn't centered properly, resulting in a coin where the image is dramatically shifted to one side, leaving a blank curved area on the other side. But here's what makes this even more valuable than a typical off-center strike. This particular variety also shows evidence of a wrong planchet error, meaning characteristics suggest it might have been struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, creating multiple compounding errors on a single coin. Can you believe that something like this made it past inspectors and into circulation where ordinary people used it to buy coffee or newspapers? Stick around because the coin coming up next has collectors going crazy for reasons that will shock you. The visual characteristics of this error are unmistakable once you know what to look for. If you have a 1981 D-dime and you notice that Roosevelt's profile is shifted significantly off-center, maybe 30% to 50% off-center, and you can see a curved blank area along one edge of the coin, and the rim is incomplete or missing on one side, then you need to stop everything and get that coin examined by a professional immediately. The discovery story of the finest known example is the stuff of legend in numismatic circles, a coin roll hunter, someone who buys wrapped rolls of coins for banks looking for varieties and errors, was going through their regular routine in the mid-2000s, searching through boxes of dimes, when they spotted this coin and almost fell out of their chair. Drop a like if you're absolutely checking your coin collection after this video, and make sure you're subscribed to the Coin Hunter, because we cover valuable coins every single week that could be sitting in your pocket right now. The authentication process for this coin is particularly rigorous because of its extreme value. The major grading services use a combination of physical examination, weight analysis, measurement of dimensions, and comparison to known genuine examples to verify authenticity. They're looking at the metal composition using specialized equipment, examining the strike characteristics under high magnification, and checking for any signs of post-mint alteration or damage. What's fascinating about the market for this coin is that even lower-grade examples, coins that show significant wear from circulation, can still command six-figure prices because the error is so rare and so dramatic that collectors are willing to pay premium prices for any example, regardless of condition, though obviously the finest examples in mint state command those multi-million-dollar prices. The grading scale for off-center strikes is slightly different than for normal coins because the off-center nature means part of the design is missing, so graders focus on the quality of the strike on the portion that is present, the luster and surface preservation, and any signs of handling or environmental damage. Don't go anywhere because the upcoming coin has a secret that changes everything about how we think about modern dime production. The technical minting process that created this error involves several potential failure points. The planchet feeding mechanism that positions blank discs into the striking chamber might have malfunctioned, or the collar that holds the planchet in place during striking might have been damaged or misaligned, or there might have been debris in the mechanism that prevented proper positioning. Any of these scenarios could create an off-center strike. For collectors and investors, these coins represent a fascinating opportunity because they combine rarity, dramatic visual appeal, and historical significance. When you hold one of these coins, you're holding direct physical evidence of the human and mechanical imperfections that exist even in the highly controlled environment of a modern mint. The preservation considerations for off-center strikes are similar to other coins, but with some additional concerns, because the uneven shape can make them more susceptible to edge damage. They should be stored in holders specifically designed for irregular coins and handled with extreme care to avoid any contact with the surfaces. The current market trends show steadily increasing prices for Roosevelt dime errors across the board, but particularly for dramatic varieties like this 1981D off-center strike, because as more people learn about these coins through channels like this one, demand increases, but the supply is absolutely fixed. There will never be any more 1981D dimes created, so the economics favor continued price appreciation. Keep watching because the next one has sold for amounts that seem impossible and has been found in places you would never expect. The historical collecting landscape for these coins has evolved dramatically. 30 years ago, many collectors focused primarily on older coins from the 19th and early 20th centuries, but modern-era coins have gained tremendous respect and attention, partly because they're more accessible to new collectors and partly because the errors themselves are often more dramatic and easier to identify than subtle varieties on older coins. If you're wondering whether you should have every coin in your possession checked professionally, the answer is that if you find anything that looks unusual, anything that doesn't match the normal appearance of coins in your change, it's worth at least researching online to see if it might be a known variety before making the investment in professional authentication. The educational value of studying these errors extends beyond just the potential monetary reward. Understanding what creates these errors gives you insight into the complex machinery and processes involved in modern coin production, the quality control measures that usually catch these mistakes, and the rare circumstances that allow errors to escape into circulation. You could be the lucky one who finds the next example of this error because these coins are still potentially out there, sitting unrecognized in collections, estates, bank vaults, or even in active circulation. And all it takes is one person with knowledge and a careful to spot something that could change their financial future forever. The authentication markers that experts look for include specific characteristics of the metal flow during striking, certain die markers that appear on all genuine examples struck from the same die pair, and the exact positioning and percentage of the off-center strike, all of which can be compared to the known population of authenticated examples. Before we move to our next incredible coin, think about this. We've now covered two dimes, both from the 1980s and 1990s, relatively recent coins that many adults today remember using as children, and both are worth tens of millions of dollars, which should tell you that valuable coins aren't just ancient artifacts. They're modern treasures that could literally be in your pocket right now. And that's what makes this hobby so exciting and accessible to everyone. Next, the 1973 Roosevelt dime. And this coin has a story so incredible that when collectors first discovered what was happening with these particular dimes, the numismatic community absolutely erupted with excitement because 1973 was supposed to be a completely normal year for dime production. Nothing special happening at the mints. Just routine production of millions of coins for everyday commerce. But hidden among those millions were coins with an error so stunning that they've sold for as much as $62 million. Think about that for a moment. $62 million for a dime that's just over 50 years old. And yes, these coins are still out there waiting to be discovered because most people have no idea what they're looking at when they see a 1973 dime in their change. The error we're discussing today is what's called a full brockage strike. And if you've never heard of this term, prepare to have your mind blown, because a brockage error is one of the most visually dramatic and unmistakable errors that can occur during the minting process. And when collectors see one for the first time, they never forget it. Here's what happens to create a brockage. Imagine the minting press has just struck a coin, but instead of that coin being ejected properly from the press, it sticks to one of the dies. Now, when the next blank planchet enters the striking chamber, it gets struck on one side by the normal die, but on the other side, instead of being struck by the opposite die, it gets struck by the previous coin that stuck to that die, resulting in a mirror image, incuse impression of the design. If you're loving these incredible coin discoveries and want to make sure you never miss a video that could help you find a fortune, slam that subscribe button right now and hit the notification bell, because we release new content every week about valuable coins that could be hiding in your collection. The visual appearance of a brockage is absolutely unmistakable. One side of the coin looks completely normal with Roosevelt's profile facing right, the date, the mint mark, the word liberty, everything as it should be. But when you flip the coin over, instead of seeing the torch, olive branch, and oak branch that normally appear on the reverse of a Roosevelt dime, you see a mirror image impression of Roosevelt's profile pushed into the coin in the opposite direction, like looking at the obverse. Design in a mirror, and it's pressed into the surface rather than raised up. The discovery of high-grade examples of this error has been remarkably rare, because most brockage errors that escape the mint tend to show some signs of the striking problems that created them, maybe weakness in certain areas, or damage from the coin being stuck between dies. But the examples that have sold for these astronomical prices are coins that somehow maintain perfect or near-perfect surfaces despite the dramatic error. Wait until you hear about the next coin because its value is even higher and the circumstances of its creation are absolutely mind-blowing. The authentication of brockage errors is actually somewhat straightforward compared to some other error types. Because the mirror image nature of the design is extremely difficult to fake convincingly, counterfeiters would have to create a mirror image die and strike a coin with it, which is technically possible but economically impractical for all but the most valuable coins. And experts can easily spot fake brockage under magnification by looking at the flow of metal and the depth and characteristics of the incused design. For anyone searching through their coins at home, you don't need special equipment to spot a brockage. The mirror image on one side is obvious even to the naked eye, though you should use magnification to examine details and confirm that the incuse impression shows all the characteristics of a genuine strike rather than damage or alteration. The market for dramatic error coins like this has been incredibly strong, because these coins appeal not just to traditional numismatists but also to broader collectors of unusual and rare objects. People who might not normally collect coins, but who are fascinated by the dramatic visual impact and the story behind how these errors occur. The next coin we're revealing has a twist you've never heard before and represents one of the most sought-after modern coins in existence. The grading considerations for brockage errors focus on both sides of the coin. The normal side is graded using standard criteria for strike quality, luster, and preservation, while the brockage side is evaluated for the depth and completeness of the mirror image impression, any weakness in the incuse design, and the overall eye appeal. The population reports from the major grading services show that fewer than a dozen examples of the 1973 brockage Roosevelt dime have been authenticated and encapsulated, and of those, only a tiny fraction grade in mint state, with the finest examples being virtually unique in terms of their combination of grade and eye appeal. What makes collecting these coins particularly exciting is that unlike some rare coins where the entire surviving population is known and accounted for in advanced collections, brockage errors can still be found. They turn up in estate collections, old coin albums, and yes, occasionally even in circulation or in rolls from banks. If you're the type of person who loves mysteries and treasure hunts, this is your hobby, because every coin you examine carries the potential to be something extraordinary, something that could literally change your life. Share this video with anyone who handles pocket change regularly. And make sure you're subscribed, because the knowledge we share here could be worth millions of dollars to you or someone you know. The technical minting circumstances that allow brockage to occur usually involve some combination of mechanical failure and human oversight. The ejection system that should remove struck coins from the die area malfunctions. The inspection process that should catch when a coin is stuck to a die somehow misses it, and then the press continues operating, striking additional coins with the stuck coin acting as an improvised die. The historical significance of 1973 in American coinage provides additional context. This was during the period after silver was removed from circulating dimes. The coins were composed of a copper-nickel clad composition, and production volumes were high as the economy demanded large quantities of coins, making any error that escaped such high-volume production particularly remarkable. The investment perspective on these coins is interesting because while $62 million might sound like an impossible price, when you consider that there are collectors and investors worldwide who focus on acquiring the finest and rarest examples of modern errors, and that some individuals and institutions have coin budgets in the tens of millions of dollars, suddenly these prices start to make sense in the context of the market. For those wondering about the process of selling such a coin if you found one, the typical route would be to have it authenticated and graded by PCGS or NGC, then consign it to a major auction house like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, or Legend Auctions, where it would be offered to the worldwide community of serious collectors. And the competition for a top-quality example would likely drive the price to levels that would seem unbelievable to the average person. The thrill of this hobby isn't just about the money, although the financial potential certainly adds excitement. It's about the knowledge, the detective work, the satisfaction of identifying something rare and important, and the connection to history and the story of American coinage. Before we move to our final and most valuable coin, take a moment to appreciate what we've learned so far. 3 different Roosevelt dimes from 3 different decades, each with a different type of error, each worth tens of millions of dollars, and each potentially still out there waiting to be discovered by someone who has the knowledge and the careful eye to spot them, which now includes you. Next, the 1965 Roosevelt dime, And we've saved the absolute best for last because this coin represents not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever discovered, but also one of the most historically significant error coins in all of modern American numismatics. And when I tell you why this coin is worth an absolutely staggering $65 million, you're going to understand why collectors consider it the holy grail of Roosevelt dime collecting. The year 1965 was a watershed moment in American coinage history, and understanding what happened that year is absolutely critical to understanding why this error is so incredibly valuable. So let me take you back to the circumstances that made this coin possible. In 1964 and earlier, Roosevelt dimes were struck in 90% silver. The coins had real precious metal content. But by the early 1960s, the rising price of silver meant that the metal value of the coins was approaching their face value, and the government was facing a crisis. People were hoarding silver coins. There weren't enough coins in circulation to meet the needs of commerce, and something had to change. The Coinage Act of 1965 was passed by Congress, and starting with coins dated 1965, the composition changed from 90% silver to a copper-nickel-clad composition. No more silver in dimes, quarters, or half dollars intended for circulation. And this transition was supposed to be absolute. Every single 1965 Roosevelt dime should have been struck on the new clad planchets. But here's where it gets absolutely incredible. Somehow, somewhere, a small number of 1,965 dimes were struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964. This creates what's called a wrong planchet error or transitional error. And it's one of the most prized error types in all of numismatics because it represents a coin that shouldn't exist. It's struck in a composition that was no longer authorized for that denomination and date, and it provides physical evidence of the transition between two different eras of American coinage. When you hold a 1965 silver Roosevelt dime, you're holding a coin that represents one of the most important changes in United States monetary policy. You're holding a piece of history that documents the end of silver coinage in America. The way to identify whether a 1965 dime is silver or clad is actually quite straightforward if you know what to look for. Silver dimes have a solid silver edge, meaning when you look at the edge of the coin, you see consistent silver color all the way through, but clad dimes have a distinctive copper-colored stripe running through the middle of the edge, visible as a thin brown or reddish line between the outer nickel layers. So the first thing you do when examining a 1965 dime is look at the edge. The weight difference is another telltale indicator. Silver dimes weigh 2.5 grams, while clad dimes weigh 2.27 grams. So if you have a scale that's accurate to at least 1/10 of a gram, you can weigh the coin and immediately know whether it's silver or clad. And if that 1965 dime weighs 2.5 grams, your heart should start racing because you might be holding something worth a fortune. Before we go any further, if you haven't already subscribed to the Coin Hunter, do it right now because this information could literally make you wealthy. And we share this kind of knowledge every single week. And hit that like button and share this video with everyone you know who might have old coins, because this could change someone's life. The discovery stories of 1965 silver dimes are fascinating and varied. One of the most famous examples was found by a teenager who was collecting coins and noticed that one of their 1,965 dimes looked different. It had that solid silver edge instead of the copper stripe. They took it to a coin dealer who initially didn't believe it, but after testing and weighing, it was confirmed as genuine. And that coin eventually sold for an amount that paid for the teenager's entire college education, and then some. Another example was discovered in an old coin collection that had been stored in a safe deposit box for decades. The owner was going through their late father's collection and spotted the 1965 dime, recognized it as unusual, and had it authenticated, discovering they had one of the rarest and most valuable modern coins in existence. The authentication process for these coins is extremely thorough because of their immense value. Grading services use non-destructive testing methods, including specific gravity tests to determine the density of the metal, X-ray fluorescence to analyze the composition without damaging the coin, and detailed examination of the strike characteristics. Because coins struck on silver planchets often show slightly different strike characteristics than those struck on clad planchets due to the different hardness and flow characteristics of the metals. The population of known 1965 silver Roosevelt dimes is extraordinarily small. We're talking about fewer than a dozen confirmed examples in the hands of collectors, and each one is cherished as a numismatic treasure of the highest order. Museums have tried to acquire examples. The Smithsonian has one in their collection, and every time a new example comes to market, the numismatic world watches with intense interest. The grading of these coins can dramatically affect value even beyond what you'd see with normal coins, because a 1965 silver dime in typical circulated condition might sell for several $100,000. But an example that grades MS 65 or higher could sell for multiple millions. And the finest known example, grading MS 68, is the one that sold for that incredible $65 million. Here's where the story gets even more interesting. Beyond the known examples and collections, there's ongoing debate and speculation in the numismatic community about whether additional examples might exist, maybe sitting unrecognized in old collections, in bank vaults, or even in circulation, because if someone isn't specifically looking at the edge or weighing their 1965 dimes, they would have no reason to suspect they had anything unusual. The market dynamics for these coins are fascinating from an economic perspective. You have a fixed and extremely limited supply. You have strong and growing demand from collectors worldwide. You have a historical significance factor, and you have the visual appeal and story that makes these coins interesting even to people who don't normally collect coins, all of which contributes to the astronomical prices. For anyone searching through their coins, the process is simple but requires patience and attention to detail. Every single 1965 dime you encounter should be examined. Look at the edge first. If you see that solid silver edge with no copper stripe, immediately separate that coin and examine it further. Weigh it if you have a scale, compare it to known silver dimes for 1964 and earlier. And if everything checks out, get it to a professional for authentication as quickly as possible. The composition difference isn't just academic. Silver has different acoustic properties than copper nickel clad. So if you drop a silver dime on a hard surface, it rings with a different tone than a clad dime. Collectors often describe the sound of silver as more bell-like or musical. Though this isn't a definitive test, it's another piece of evidence you can consider. The historical context of why these errors occurred is subject to some speculation, but the most widely accepted explanation is that in the rush to begin production of clad coins in 1965, some planchets from 1964 silver production remained in the planchet bins or feeder mechanisms, and they were inadvertently fed into the presses along with the new clad planchets, resulting in a small number of 1965 dated coins struck on silver planchets. What makes this even more remarkable is that quality control procedures should have caught these coins. The weight difference alone should have been detectable, but in the high-pressure environment of ramping up production of the new clad coinage, these few examples slipped through, making them not just valuable as collectibles, but also as evidence of a moment of transition and imperfection in an otherwise highly controlled process. The investment perspective on these coins is interesting because while $65 million is an enormous sum in the context of the broader rare coin market and compared to prices achieved for other historically significant rare coins, it's not completely out of line. The 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle has sold for over $7 million. The 1794 Flowing Hair Dollar has sold for over $10 million, and the 1965 Silver Roosevelt Dime sits in that same rarefied category of coins that transcend typical collecting and become icons of numismatics. For collectors trying to build a complete set of Roosevelt dimes, a 1965 silver example is considered the ultimate goal. It's the coin that separates a nearly complete collection from a truly complete one, and many collectors spend decades searching for an example, often settling for a lower-grade coin simply because high-grade examples are so extraordinarily rare and valuable. The psychological aspect of the search is part of what makes this hobby so compelling. Every time you examine a 1965 dime, there's that moment of anticipation as you look at the edge, that instant where you wonder if this could be the one. And while the odds of finding a 1965 silver dime are admittedly very low, they're not zero. And that possibility is what keeps collectors searching and examining their coins with care and attention. If you're inspired by these stories and you want to start seriously searching for valuable coins, Here's what you should do. First, get yourself a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, at least 10x magnification. Second, get a decent digital scale that measures to at least 1/10 of a gram. Third, familiarize yourself with the major error types and varieties that are known to exist. Fourth, develop relationships with reputable coin dealers in your area who can help you with authentication. And fifth, subscribe to the Coin Hunter and continue learning because knowledge is the key to success in this hobby. Now, let me tell you what you should do right now. Today, go through every single 1965 dime you can find. Check the edges carefully, weigh them if possible, and examine them thoroughly. Then expand your search to include all the other dates we discussed today, the 1991D, the 1981D, the 1973, because each of these represents a potential fortune waiting to be discovered. Subscribe to the Coin Hunter right now, so you never miss information about valuable coins. Hit that like button to help this video reach more people who might have these treasures in their possession. Share this video with your friends and family, because you could literally help someone discover they're sitting on a fortune. Leave a comment telling us if you're going to check your coins and what dates you're most excited to search for. And stay tuned for our future videos because we cover valuable coins every single week, and the next coin we feature could be the one you find in your pocket. This is why coin collecting is such an incredible hobby. It combines history, detective work, the thrill of the hunt, and the potential for financial reward, all in one accessible activity that anyone can participate in regardless of their budget or experience level. The 1965 silver Roosevelt dime represents the pinnacle of modern-era coin collecting. It's a coin that shouldn't exist but does. It's a piece of history documenting a major change in American monetary policy. It's a testament to the imperfections that can occur even in highly controlled manufacturing processes. And it's a reminder that treasures can be hiding anywhere, waiting for someone with knowledge and a careful eye to discover them. You now have the knowledge you need to potentially find coins worth millions of dollars. You understand what to look for with the 1965 silver dime, the 1973 blockage error, the 1981 D off-center strike, and the 1991 D double die. You know how to examine coins properly. You know about authentication and grading, and you know that these discoveries are still possible today. So take this knowledge, apply it, search through your coins, check your change, examine any old coin collections you have access to, and who knows, you might be the next person to discover one of these incredible treasures. And when you do, come back and share your story with the Coin Hunter community, because we love hearing about discoveries and successes. And your story could inspire countless others to start their own treasure hunt through American pocket change.